And so the path forward, to summarize, I have no pressing concerns at this point, except for one, and that is being able to meet all the expectations of all the residents in the community, which is not possible because you're always going to have people that are polar opposite. But I like to think that the mass of people will be happy with the decisions that we make. Very easy things to say, we're going to go for an override, which has to be voted and it's approved by the town. And you never want to do that except as a case of last resort, which is what happened 2 years ago when we did it. We said, we're going to have no free cash at all. And to be honest with you, we're going to have to cut some things. So that was a critical mass point. We're beyond that. I think that override 2 years ago has gotten to us a point now where we're talking about our revenues just matching our existing level service costs. But if we want to grow, if we want to continue to fund education and continue to fund other programs that we value, we do need to consider options to grow our tax base a little further. Again, either approving development or keeping our rural green spaces and considering other alternatives, which means increasing commercial activity in the town and thinking about alternative revenue sources like alt energy, ventures with energy companies or solar panels or wind farms or whatever that happens to be available.
So
or again, a combination of all those things, not like one path only, but
are you in favor of a full-time planner, town planner?
I am.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Simple reason, I just think getting the grant, having someone that's going to be able to work on getting grants.
Yeah. Because the town depends a lot on grants, it seems like.
Well, we do, and there's, but again, don't forget, of the 31 million of revenue, 24 million is, that grant money is about 2 to 3 million, maybe in total, plus other things. That's all that 2 to 3 million grants and whatnot are included in there. So it is a respectable portion, but it's not a huge amount. But without those grants,
we couldn't
do certain things that we've already been doing.
We don't have that amount of money.
So clearly growing that number, growing the amount of grants that we receive will enable us to, pursue the programs that we want to go after.
So is money in the budget for 2022 to hire a planner?
Not at this point.
Not at this point. How would we do it?
Well, there's some discussion about, do you want a full-time planner or do you want to continue to have someone on a consultant basis? And I think that's the decision that we need to make. And that's something that we will be discussing in future FinCom meetings, I believe, as we continue on
The
this.
TA said last night in the finance, well, I was watching your finance committee from the most recent one. He didn't seem in favor of it.
Again, more discussion is needed.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to give a lot of deferral to Andrew on this, but I think it just, my perspective is having, again, going back to my saying, the right person, the right person with the right tool in the right place will make the best.
And prioritize. I mean, a planner over a social worker right now. Well, I don't think we could hire both.
Well, you're right, and we can't right now simply because we've never built up any type of excess, right? We can't count on it. So because we are so lean, you're right, we have to make those tough decisions and say, no, we can't have both.
Right.
And both of these things aren't frivolous in my mind.
No.
I mean, this isn't like, oh, it'd be kind of nice to have. This is things that I honestly believe as we progress through the next decade are going to become more and more relevant. The social worker is part of a broader national call now for, well, some refer to it as defunding the police, which I don't support, by the way. But I do support some of the messaging in there, and when you look at a lot of the narratives that are coming out of that sector that are talking about defunding the police, there is a lot about realigning spending to match community needs.
Which makes sense.
In this case, they do talk a lot about social workers doing it. Now, I know there's a lot of people probably going to be listening to this and say, oh, Quinton wants a social worker sitting in a patrol car. Not at all.
No.
I'm talking about being preemptive, about addressing, say, mental health issues or social disorder issues before the person ends up
in the emergency room at
in the emergency room or in the back of the patrol car.
Right.
That's what I'm supporting,
Me
and that's
too.
the initiative that I would support. But unfortunately, in our current budget environment, we can't make a decision on having both. As a matter of fact, the way it's playing out right now, if we are strictly looking at the current budget, we can't afford a full-time person in either of those roles.
Yeah.
But we do need to talk a little bit more to Andrew about, okay, if not this year, next year, what can we do? This is where these discussions about how do we expand this tax base thing, we gotta stop talking about it and let's start implementing it. If we do have strategies available where we could increase revenue or reduce costs, let's get active. Let's set up Gantt charts so that we understand the timeline, who's doing what, let's set priorities, let's have regular discussions with the community, and start moving forward with those. Some of these things will probably involve community input. Again, maybe town meetings or special meetings that may need votes, depending on the scope of what we're doing. So because of that extra effort, we need to make sure that we start these things now.
Because a planner seems like it would pay for itself at some point, it pays its own. So.
You think?
Right, that seems basic, that just seems like a no-brainer to me, I don't know.
Yeah, well, again, I think the more discussion is merited, and again, it's not a matter, to me, it's not a matter of if, it's when.
Yeah, okay.
Can we afford it in 2022, or is this something that's on a wish list for 2023? And it's not put on a wish list to kind of hope that it dies on the vine and we don't talk about it again.
Yeah.
It's gonna be front and center, especially in my mind. If we can't do it this year, including the social worker, I think we need to really be focused on how do we accommodate this need in the future, in the very near future.
So what I see the social worker being, to me, why is that falling on towns to pick up that cost? That seems like that should be a state, work it out with the state. They already have departments, social worker departments, they already actually work with the police. So maybe it's a redo of how things work. Like, I'm not so sure the town needs to be picking that up. Like, I think maybe the town
refunding from the police budget of the state.
The town needs to be putting pressure on the state
Exactly.
to expand that social worker program so they work better with the police.
Exactly.
Whether the police have to call the social worker to come or the social worker, but I don't think that needs to be a cost that the town should be worrying to pick up.
We should be considering all the options,
Yeah.
including pressuring and working with, well, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And working with state
Yeah.
and government more to see what they can do and to contribute.
Because it seems like now we're opening up another whole department that you're gonna need policies, you're gonna need procedures for this person, it's all gonna have to be worked out. The state already has that, and state social workers already work with the police. So
I agree.
I would say, take the town paying for that out of it, like, go to the state and work it out with them.
Totally understand your point.
Because,
The way I see this, I think, going back to the comments I made a few minutes ago about how this is becoming a national issue, a national discussion about defunding police. I understand completely what you're saying, Kathy. I believe in the future, and again, this is just me speaking personally. I believe in the future there's going to be more and more pressure for local communities to take on more of that cost, to define the way that their police force interacts with the communities, and more specifically, the pressure will be on to have more, social workers or community helpers involved in the broader community before they become a police issue. So I understand and I agree with you.
I mean,
I think
social
we need-
workers are in town already, they're already dealing with family issues.
Right.
The police already know the families and the kids that have the issues. I just see it as another thing put on the towns where we can't afford it. And I just don't think it should be left totally to the town.
Excellent.
I don't.
It's nice to get the feedback direct.
Yeah, and social
Because it could
workers,
escalate too, the cost could just keep escalating
course
on
it
what you're
would.
responsible for.
Exactly.
you're building another whole, it's
Layer
just
of-
not one social worker, it's gonna be a whole
whole
town
department.
Right. I think you have to nip it in the bud before it gets
Well, I think
out of
we need a planner,
control.
we need a planner first.
for a planner.
The planner will bring in revenue to pay for the social worker, right?
That's true, that's exactly right.
And a lot of
That's
this,
how-
and the social workers actually aren't all that hep on accompanying some of the police to these situations. They kind of view it as, it's a little,
Well, if it's
no,
risky.
it's,
To your point about, is that a cost we should take on? I think it's something that's a good investment, but I would like the feedback from the community to let us know, hey,
What they want.
this isn't really where we need to go right now, because I agree with the perspective that we already have social workers involved, why take on this cost? And that's a valid issue. I also see the importance of having someone local, someone that is more familiar with our community. They're not just coming in from another town to work on another case.
Mm-hmm.
They're working with the town broadly, including the police, including
Yeah.
other committees, right? And actually, maybe even that person more involved with some of the planning that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Working with our council on aging, working with our communities on a government basis, not just coming in to address a file,
Right.
or a client in that case. So that would be my perspective. Not so much that I think we should take on the responsibility of funding it,
Mm-hmm.
but we should have someone working that's closer and with a greater
Closer to
connection
the
to the
town.
connection to the town and to our governing bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of those resources being out there, so I'm gonna stick with the town shouldn't take on the cost and work it out with either this, because there are a lot of those services out there. Work it out with the state.
Right. Could we go back to the 90,000? Is the 90,000 shortage in the 2022 budget?
Yes,
So we need to come up with 90,000.
and that's part of the process that we're going through.
Are
right
you
now.
gonna have to cut anything?
Well, I don't see it as in cuts. It would probably be just elimination of some of the increases that
Okay.
come, right?
Okay.
And what that looks like. Now, there's other options too. I mean, we could decide that we do have a little bit of free cash, we could use that. That's a habit I don't wanna get into.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
But there is some options around,
Okay.
addressing that 90,000. If we believe the services and the incremental costs, need to be upheld, then, we do have some other routes to get to
Okay.
covering.
Okay.
Right now, what we're doing is I believe we're building in only the services and how much they would cost based on revenue projections,
Mhm.
not on use of free cash flow.
Yeah, and the fiscal year starts July 1st, right?
July
People
1st.
think 2022 isn't until
No.
2020. It
Yeah.
starts July 1st.
Right, so it's a year is identified by the time or the year it ends. So in this case, it ends June 30,
Yeah.
2021, so we're in fiscal year 2021.
Yeah.
2022 will be ending July 1st, it starts 2021, it goes through June 30,
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah, that's, because you forget that.
Can we just clarify for people who watch this? So we're negative 90,000, that's without the additional department wish list before those even start coming in?
Largely, because this 90 is based on the adjustments made to the town administrator.
So say at town meeting, the citizens vote for police, or they vote every wish list thing in, aye. What happens then? How do
And
you
they
find
also,
those
they
wish
would
lists?
need to, in that case, they would need to approve the overall budget.
Right, Yeah.
And if there's an overage, then the question is, we need to pay for it.
Yeah.
Are we now talking about another 2.5%
That's right.
override?
Yep.
Yeah,
So I think people need to know that,
yeah.
like before they go to town meeting, go, yeah, I
And
want
vote
this,
everything in,
I want that, they voted in, where does that leave them?
This is the importance of
Yeah.
communication, real-time
Yeah.
communication,
Right.
coming from the finance committee, coming from the town administrator's office to the community. More importantly, participation in these meetings going
Mhm.
forward.
Schedule.
So I just wanna turn it back around to the pot, the marijuana thing, no, 'cause
Yeah.
people, I just wanna make it clear, so say we had those two pot shops, the estimated revenue was what, 500,000?
That was the number we were using, about 500,000, net of any expenses that
Right.
we've incurred.
So that wish list
Would have
could,
definitely covered those costs.
Yep.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I was so vocal during the meeting,
Yeah.
spoke up and said, look, we need to support this. It was the reason why the FinCom unanimously supported the amendment that was presented. So we wanna make sure that people understand that those decisions have real impact.
Have consequences.
They have an impact on the services provided, and everyone needs to understand that there's no magic bucket. The community pays for this through their taxes, and that's the only revenue source that we really have that we rely on. The question is, if you want to support increasing, a police officer or two, or a fireman, or an EMT, or any of the other funds that we need, extra, a social worker, a full-time planner,
Probably could have paid for all of it, maybe.
pretty close to it, yeah,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
Yeah. Can that vote come up again? Or is there a
Uh,
time lag for the
there is
rezone? Because it was a rezoning vote, right? Was
Yeah, I
what
think
it
there's a
was.
process, I'm not sure actually, so
Yeah.
I prefer not to
know if
respond to
those
that, I
people
would
would
defer
want
to
it.
Andrew,
Right.
I
So
would,
then
I would
we'll
be
know.
listening in on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a discussion. I actually don't have any more
No,
questions
great.
unless you do.
You're
I
great,
think-
very articulate. It's
Unless
great.
you have something else to
You
add.
answered a lot of questions
But-
when you were talking.
Yeah.
Good.
So the thing I get out of this is vote, because
Yeah.
even that pot shop shows how important it is.
Mhm.
And
Sometimes it's inconvenient, but you gotta do it.
And I support, again, my apologies for being a little bit of a broken record here, but
no,
please be involved, get involved.
Yeah,
It is so easy to be the proverbial armchair quarterback, to say,
Yeah.
oh, they didn't look at this, they don't know.
yeah.
We make decisions based on the information we have available right now. I can't speak for everyone in government, but like I say, my own personal political spin, I don't bring it to play. When I look at it, I look at for the best interest of the town, and I make that determination, not based on what I believe. I don't, people say, oh, the guy said there's I know there's a group of people out there, oh, he's a registered Republican, he just wants to cut tax, he wants to. No, I don't.
That's not,
Everybody
you never
should
said
want that.
Yeah.
I don't. I want what's best
You
for the
can't cut
community I
taxes.
live in.
Yeah,
I'm part of this community.
right.
So when I make decisions, it's based on what I believe is best for the town. And that stems from my understanding of what the town wants.
Based on their participation in voting and town meeting and.
Exactly. Even the discussion we were having today about
Right.
the social worker, Kathy has given me a different perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe, we should pursue that, how we get the state more involved. It was something that I considered before, but you know what? Now that I understand that it's a passion of hers,
Yeah.
I'm not big on state involvement, but I'm also not big on the town picking out
Exactly.
all the
Exactly.
budget when there's
I
services
understand
up
that.
there.
Because once
that
you take
work
it,
with.
once you take it, it's yours. That's what it
but
seems like in this
but
district.
her input, I believe, is gonna help
Yeah,
me
good.
make a better decision on this.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not doing things unilaterally, I'm not doing things from a political spin,
No,
but in order for me to do the best job, right, I gotta have the right tools and I gotta be in the right place.
right.
And with that said, I need input, I understand what this community wants and what and again, I'm not gonna please everybody, we're not gonna please everybody, I say me, but I mean the governance body of the town. Will not please everybody. No matter what you do, you're gonna have someone that's gonna be ecstatically happy about it,
Yeah,
and someone who's gonna be very upset about it.
right.
I'm hoping that the masses in between, there's more people
Yeah.
smiling in that middle mass. And to maximize that is what we're really doing, meaning we wanna make the best decisions for the community. To do that, we need your input. Please participate.
Yeah.
Select just one committee
Yeah, that's great.
and participate in one committee meeting this year.
Yeah.
If you're not registered to vote, please get out and register. Spread the good news of democracy and get your friends and family that you know aren't registered, get them involved. Even if you know that friend or family would probably vote against you
Yeah, right.
in your issue, at least their voice is heard.
Yeah,
That's
that's
it.
what it's all about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Quinton,
That's a
that
good-
was great.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for having me.
Yeah.
That's
Yep,
good.
thanks.